But actually, it turns out there's a twist here, because givers are often sacrificing themselves, but they make their organizations better. We have a huge body of evidence, many, many studies, looking at the frequency of giving behavior that exists in a team or an organization. And the more often people are helping and sharing their knowledge and providing mentoring, the better organizations do on every metric we can measure. Higher profits, customer satisfaction, employee retention, even lower operating expenses. So givers spend a lot of time trying to help other people and improve the team, and then unfortunately they suffer along the way. And I want to talk about what it takes to build cultures where givers actually get to succeed. So I wondered then, if givers are the worst performers, who are the best performers? And let me start with the good news. It's not the takers. Takers tend to rise quickly, but also fall quickly in most jobs. And they fall at the hands of matchers. If you're a matcher, you believe in an eye for an eye, a just world. And so when you meet a taker, you feel like it's your mission in life to just punish the hell out of that person. And that way justice gets served. Well, most people are matchers, and that means if you're a taker, it tends to catch up with you eventually. What goes around will come around. And so the logical conclusion is it must be the matchers who are the best performers. But they're not. In every job, in every organization I've ever studied, the best results belong to the givers again.
So we had the idea, can we take some of these NASA-type ideas and apply them to our carbon problem here on Earth? Could we cultivate these NASA-type microbes in order to make valuable products here on Earth? And we started a company to do it. And in that company, we actually discovered that these hydrogenotrophs, which I will actually call nature's supercharged carbon recyclers, we found that they are a powerful class of microbes that had been largely overlooked and understudied, and that they could make some really valuable products. And so we began cultivating these products, these microbes in our lab. We found that we can make essential amino acids from carbon dioxide using these microbes. And we even made a protein-rich meal that has an amino acid profile that's similar to what you might find in some animal proteins. And we began cultivating them even further, and we found that we could make oil. And oils are used to manufacture many products. We made an oil that was similar to a citrus oil, which can be used for flavoring and for fragrances, but it also can be used as a biodegradable cleaner or even as a jet fuel. And we made an oil that's similar to palm oil. And palm oil is used to manufacture a wide range of consumer and industrial goods.
back in the 1970s, Afos King famously pronounced that for Bhutan, gross national happiness is more important than gross national product. Ever since, all development in Bhutan is driven by GNH, a pioneering vision that aims to improve the happiness and well-being of our people. But that's easier said than done, especially when you're one of the smallest economies in the world. Our entire GDP is less than $2 billion. I know that some of you here are worth more individually than the entire economy of my country. So our economy is small. But here's where it gets interesting. Education is completely free. All citizens are guaranteed free school education, and those that work hard are given free college education. Healthcare is also completely free. Medical consultation, medical treatment, medicines, they're all provided by the state. We manage this because we use our limited resources very carefully, and because we stay faithful to the core mission of GNH, which is development with values. Our economy is small, and we must strengthen it. Economic growth is important. But that economic growth must not come from undermining our unique culture or our pristine environment.
Now let me first show you how the unity is shown in chimpanzees. What you see here is two males on the left who are standing together. You also see the big canine teeth that they have. And they're standing together and they demonstrate to the rest of the group, we are together. We are a unit. The males on the right are walking together in synchrony. That's another way of demonstrating that you are together. And so demonstrating unity is extremely important in a coalition system. And as I said, in the primaries, always I'm waiting for that moment, because then you have two members of the same party who have been fighting with each other, and they need to come together at some moment. And it leads to very awkward situations. People who don't like each other need to embrace each other and stand together. And that's absolutely essential for the unity of the party. And if you don't do that, the party may fall apart. And so if it doesn't go well, like in this particular case, then the party is in deep doo-doo, because they have not demonstrated unity.
In 2012, I traveled to Colombia to prepare for the first ever prevention study in Alzheimer's disease. A simple blood test could detect the mutation. If the study is successful, patients could be identified and treated before the onset of symptoms. But what about the rest of the world with Alzheimer's disease due to different genetic and environmental risks? What about patients like my friend David? Today's technologies, smartphones, wearables, online patient communities, and online assessment tools can be used to gather data in an unprecedented global scale. With enough data, we can begin to understand the emerging genetics and this disease, much the way Dr. Lopera did in Colombia. When that happens, we can begin to understand your risk for Alzheimer's disease, the biologic pathways that are most important in you, and most importantly, when to begin treatment. Now is the time that patients, family members, physicians, scientists, and drug developers all have a role to play in defeating Alzheimer's disease.
The summer learning loss is a term that they use to describe the regressions that kids in low-income neighborhoods face relative to their affluent peers. So they say in lower-income neighborhoods, kids forget anywhere from 2.5 to 3.5 months of what they learned during the school year over the summer, while their middle-class peers break even or even make gains. When I first learned about the achievement gap, I was a freshman in college, and I sort of wanted to understand what the causes of it were. And as I started to do my research, I realized that there were 1,000 different reasons for why the achievement gap existed. Everything from a lack of positive role models to poor health conditions in so many of these inner city and low-income neighborhoods. And then I found this startling statistic that said that 2/3 of the achievement gap could be directly attributed to unequal summer learning opportunities, or the summer learning loss. In low-income neighborhoods, kids forget anywhere from 2.5 to 3.5 months of what they learned over the summer from the school year. And so when they return to school, they're now 2.5 to 3.5 months behind their affluent or their middle-class peers. Just to put that in perspective for you all, the school year from September to June is only 10 months long. If a kid forgets 2.5 to 3.5 months of what they learned, that's almost 25 to 35% of their learning. Teachers have then reported that they spend anywhere from 1.5 to 2 months reteaching old material. So if you add that additional 20%, you're talking about 50% of a kid's learning. So we sit here and we ask ourselves, why does this 8th grader only have a 4th grade reading level? And the truth of the matter is that, theoretically speaking, they've only been in school for half the time.
Suicide is one of the leading causes of death in our country and actually in the world, and yet it's largely preventable. It has been trending up in terms of our national rate of suicide over the last decade or so. It had trended down prior to that. So we're at a place now where we really want to make a difference. We want to use the methods that we know can work to lower the suicide rate and allow those who are struggling to get the help that they need. Mental health problems play a significant role for suicide risk. In fact, if you had to pick out one of the many risk factors that tend to come together to create suicide, mental health problems could be called actually a necessary but not sufficient factor in place. In greater than 90% of cases of suicide, as shown in the research, there is a diagnosable mental health condition at play, whether or not it was diagnosed or treated. Now, many other factors then lay on top of that to rise up to create an imminent risk for that sense of desperation, hopelessness, but then also the thought, the planning, and the ability to act on those suicidal impulses.
Is there an external reality? Of course there's an external reality. The world exists, it's just that we don't see it. At least we don't see it as it is. In fact, we can never see it as it is. In fact, it's even useful to not see it as it is. And the reason is because it goes back to really Berkeley, who tells us we have no direct access to that physical world other than through our senses. And because our senses conflate multiple aspects of that world, we can never know whether our perceptions are in any way accurate. And so this has always been a very deep question. It's not so much do we see the world in the way that it really is, but do we actually even see it accurately? And the answer is no, we don't. So if we remember that the information that's coming onto your eye or onto your skin or into your ears is inherently meaningless because it could mean anything, then it means that we need another kind of data in order to be able to generate behaviors that are useful. And that data is necessarily historical, which means that the functional structure of your brain is really a physical manifestation of your past interactions with the world. And it's a physical active interaction. It's not a passive receiving data like a Facebook broadcast. It's an active engagement with that world.
I think a good learning environment has to have, I think, the tenet that brave failure is preferable to timid success. By which I mean, I think our minds are great and powerful things. And I think that to have courage inform our thinking, and to be able to go out perhaps past where we may be comfortable, to go into the unknown between human beings and see where that takes us, to not stay safe in our own position, but to make it safe for other people to be able to share. I think that that's where we get to new ideas. I think that's where we get to brave ideas. I think that's where we get to solutions that we might not otherwise have found. So fostering an environment where people can be brave and where ideas don't always have to be pristine, I think is very important.